WikiLeaks has released Clinton emails implicating Clinton and Mullah-Gulen's intimate connections. However, the Gulen-Clinton ties and joint operations go back much further. In fact, they go back to 1998 and 1999, during the starting stage of Operation Gladio B, when Fethullah Gulen was brought into the United States via CIA per Clinton administration's strategy for Central Asia, Caucasus, and the Middle East. The first person in the U.S. to expose Fethullah Gulen, when no one had ever heard of his name, was Sibel Edmonds. Starting in 2011, Edmonds began exposing Fethullah Gulen and his network, Gulen's major role in CIA NATO Operation Gladio B, Operation Gladio, and CIA's Graham Fuller as Gulen's handler, and most importantly, the Clinton administration's direct role in utilizing and directing Fethullah Gulen and his network beginning in 1997. Here is Sibel Edmonds discussing how the CIA NATO Gladio B operation brought Gulen into the United States in 1998 and 1999 during the Clinton administration.
The Gladio went to Plan B mode for Central Asia Caucasus via Islam. And these Islamic factions, they already had a candidate in mind, a leader. And this man was this preacher, this symbol of fanatic Islam in Turkey. Now they no longer call him fanatic because he's supported by US. We call him a moderate Islamist. And his name is Fethullah Gulen. Now, Fethullah Gulen was preaching in Turkey during these 1990s against the secular government. Now, the military regime in Turkey hated this guy. So he was wanted. There were already some trials. They wanted to put him in jail. Okay, he was going through all this period. Accident happens. And he's wanted. He's actually declared criminal, terrorist, anti-secularist by the Turkish government. Yet, mysteriously, after Susurluk incident, this guy, Fethullah Gulen, in a private Gulf stream, ends up in the United States of America, lands here in Washington, D.C. Why the United States? This is a great Turkic Republic, Islam. Why are you coming to U.S.? He hasn't left the United States since. This is since 1997.
In fact, Edmonds was the first person exposing CIA's Graham Fuller as Fethullah Gulen's handler for the CIA NATO operations in Turkey, Central Asia, and the Caucasus.
Fuller himself has an interesting background that includes his 2-decade stint with the Central Intelligence Agency. During that time, he served as National Intelligence Officer for Near East and South Asia. One of his most notorious acts during that time was penning a memo that, according to the New York Times, later became the basis for the Iran-Contra scandal. In addition, Fuller has long made the argument that Islam is a potentially useful geopolitical tool for the United States to manipulate for their own ends. He has been quoted as saying, "The policy of guiding the evolution of Islam and of helping them against our adversaries worked marvelously well in Afghanistan against the Russians. The same doctrines can still be used to destabilize what remains of Russian power, and especially to counter the Chinese influence in Central Asia." Fuller's ties also extend to the network of Imam Fethullah Gulen, an Islamic preacher who was run out of Turkey for allegations of conspiracy to overthrow the secular government. Gulen ended up in Pennsylvania, where he now oversees a vast organization known as the Gulen Movement, which has over $20 billion at its disposal for setting up Islamic schools in over 100 countries. Being a wanted man by the Turkish government, Gulen did not just waltz into the US and gain immediate residency. Instead, he fought a protracted legal battle that included reference letters from well-connected political figures, including none other than Graham Fuller.
And in a similar vein, the Gulen movement, which many of you have heard of undoubtedly, is the biggest social movement based on religious values in Turkey today, with huge infrastructure, educational infrastructure, devoting lots of attention to education, communications, publications, and schools now in perhaps over 100 countries of the world, including in the United States, and has many centers, including here in Texas, and indeed many of the lectures that I've been giving here have been part of the cooperation with the various Gulen-affiliated organizations.
Graham Fuller retired from the CIA about maybe 10, 15 years ago, but he has still been working as contractor with the CIA. Now, as with Graham Fuller, this is very interesting, Lou, because about 6, 7 years ago, I released a list of about 15, 20 Americans, U.S. officials, both from elected officials but also appointed individuals. And these individuals, with their names, appeared in other sites, but I just put their pictures. I said, well, the state secrets privilege puts a gag order and says, I cannot talk about the FBI targets, okay, in terms of the U.S. persons, officials involved in these terror activities, including the stuff with bin Laden and 9/11. However, I'm just putting these pictures out, and I'm putting a name, and I'm going to name it my State Secrets Privilege Gallery. Well, anybody who was familiar with my case, anybody who was following the case with all the gag orders, they knew immediately this was one way put out there for people to know who were the people involved in my case and why the state secrets privilege invocation. This was in 2007, end of 2007, early 2008, that this documents went out to people. If you look at that list, you will see Graham Fuller there.
And now I'm joined with Sibel Edmonds. Sibel, you began writing exposés and producing video interviews on Hillary-Gulen, Operation Gladio B, Gulen's entry into this country, and his CIA handlers several years ago. What was your reaction to the WikiLeaks announcement stating they plan to release information exposing Clinton and Gulen intimate ties?
Well, it is a tremendous development, Spiro. Granted, we haven't seen these documents yet, but we know that Julian Assange, through WikiLeaks tweets, has been publicizing their coming email cache from Clinton and her foundation that is going to expose her intimate relationship with Mullah Ayatollah Fethullah Gulen. And of course, as you know, I have been covering Fethullah Gulen for many, many years. And in fact, when nobody had ever even heard of this name, I was talking about Gulen's connection to the CIA, his network, his activities together with the CIA in Central Asia and Caucasus. I have to say I'm very, very excited about these coming emails. And I know some people have been criticizing WikiLeaks for the way or their style in releasing documents, but I want to go on record and say I have no problem at all. And I believe the way they're going about this, WikiLeaks and the organization, in terms of releasing the raw data and letting people to go and sift through this, the public, I'm talking about you and I, we the readers, the viewers, it's the best way, the most transparent way to put out this information. Now, in contrast to what Julian Assange and WikiLeaks is doing, you have the gold digger sold out people like Glenn Greenwald with PayPal and eBay's Pierre Omidyar, billionaire, getting millions of dollars to help the system establishment hide documents. As you know, Edward Snowden supposedly handed over hundreds of thousands of documents, and it's been 3+ years, and we haven't even had 10,000 documents exposed. So I think what they are doing is right. And for anyone who criticizes this style of release, I'm more than happy to sit down and have a debate and explain the advantage of what WikiLeaks is doing. And that's what true leak document release should be about. So we are impatiently waiting for this documents, and we're going to be going through these documents, and it's going to be extremely important. Here we have a presidential candidate, Hillary Clinton, and you're looking at ties, intimate ties between her and her husband with the man in charge of CIA's terror plots and setting up of terrorism organizations in Central Asia, in Caucasus, in Turkey, in the Middle East. So we are impatiently waiting for the release of these documents.
Can you tell us more about the importance of Hillary Clinton's intimate ties with Fethullah Gulen's network in light of the recent failed coup attempt in Turkey?
Absolutely. Now, we are talking about these email troves that's going to come in the next few days, hopefully, through WikiLeaks. But I don't think the emails will go as far back as 1990s, because to understand the relationship and the connections between Clintons, and this is both Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton as a president and later, with Fethullah Gulen, and around money amount that involves hundreds of millions of dollars, we need to go back to mid-1990s. Again, I exposed Operation Gladio B. In mid-1990s, there was a decision by CIA, NATO, MI6 to switch from Operation Gladio A into Operation Gladio B by utilizing these various Islamic factions and setting up terror cells and targeting Central Asia, Caucasus, certain portions of the Middle East. And that's when Fethullah Gulen, Mullah Fethullah Gulen came into this picture. Well, one of the first implementations of Operation Gladio B was during the Balkans conflict, okay? This was when we started taking Balkans apart and we started making 3-4 countries out of each one of those Eastern Bloc countries. When did this take place? It took place during Bill Clinton's presidency. It was on his watch. Operation Gladio B it started during the administration of Bill Clinton. And in 1998, when the grooming took place with Fethullah Gulen and the CIA NATO players, it was per Clinton's, and this is both Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, that was decided to have private planes going to Turkey and taking this guy, Mullah Fethullah Gulen, this Islamist terrorist, put him on the plane, bring him into the United States. Now, I worked in the FBI, and I have gone on record for the past 14 years. The very explosive, important files that I got the state secrets privilege order on, I got gag order on, had to do with this special operation, Operation Gladio B, for the files that dated from 1997, late 1997, until February 2002. And I can tell you from firsthand information, from direct information, that FBI was already by 2000, 2001 pursuing Fethullah Gulen in several different divisions, both regular crime division, counterterrorism division, and also white-collar crime. So they had several investigations going on that started immediately in late 1999 on Fethullah Gulen. And it was Clinton's White House through Janet Reno, and this was when Janet Reno was in charge of the Department of Justice, that the FBI investigators, and these were my direct bosses, special agents, were ordered to stop all the criminal investigations and funnel all those folders on Fethullah Gulen, thick files of heroin connection, money laundering, and all sorts of embezzlement that was actually done under the umbrella of the CIA's unit set up for him, to take all those files, and they transferred those files to counterintelligence. And for people who don't understand the difference between counterintelligence and counterterrorism and criminal division in the FBI, in counterintelligence investigations, you gather information, but you can never, ever use that information in court to jail someone. You cannot bring as FBI a court case, meaning it's only for intelligence gathering purposes. So Janet Reno, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, they pressured the FBI. They gave direct orders saying, everything you have collected on Fethullah Gulen, you are going to seize this operation investigations. You are going to transfer all those files and only pursue it under counterintelligence. Meaning, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, they gave this guy and his criminal activities in the United States immunity, blanket immunity. They actually stepped in and saved this terrorist, this criminal, this heroin operator. And this happened on Bill Clinton's watch. So this is why I'm emphasizing the importance of these emails that we would like to see and analyze, but also to remind our viewers that the relationship, as we are going to show, actually, let's show it right now. Here is former President Bill Clinton, the man who brought in the terrorist Imam Fethullah Gulen into the United States, okay, on Fethullah Gulen and Fethullah Gulen's relationship with himself and his wife. Let's watch this.
Good evening. In this interdependent world, the fates of people on opposite sides of the globe are increasingly linked. And it's critical to keep the lines of communications open as much as we can. That's why the communication between the Turkish-American community and the people of Turkey is so important. It's important to ensure your vibrant cultural heritage, to make sure it continues to thrive and inspires and builds a bridge that reaches over all faiths and creeds and the ocean. By being here tonight, you are contributing to lasting peace and security at home and abroad. You're contributing to the promotion of the ideals of tolerance and interfaith dialogue, inspired by Fethullah Gulen and his transnational social movement. You do it through your everyday lives, and you are truly strengthening the fabric of our common humanity, as well as promoting the ongoing cultural and educational ties that bind our world together. I want to thank you for your contributions to America, for your contributions to stronger Turkish-American relationships and better understanding, and especially for your friendship to Hillary and to me. Thank you.
So as you can see, these people, Clinton administration was already working with this terrorist, with this money launderer, with this heroin dealer, with $20+ billion net worth here in the United States, dating back in late 1990s. And of course, with the coming email, we are going to see that they were being paid off further through all the money, the drug money, the heroin money, the money laundering money, the Islamic terror money that is being funneled, has been funneled from Fethullah Gulen and his network to, of course, Hillary Clinton, our presidential candidate, to her foundation. So we are basically looking at thugs. We are looking at criminal entities here. I'm not talking about Fethullah Gulen. I'm talking about a president and later a former president and a presidential candidate, Hillary Clinton.
You have been emphasizing the CIA's Graham Fuller in his role in your state secrets privilege case and Fethullah Gulen's operations. In fact, in 2008, you released the names of the culprits involved in your state secrets privilege case, and Graham Fuller shows up prominently there. Tell us a bit more about Graham Fuller.
Well, as you mentioned and provided our viewers with some of the footage and the documentation, I began screaming the name CIA's Graham Fuller as one of the main players in Operation Gladio B and with Fethullah Gulen and setting up madrasas and terror cells in Central Asia and Caucasus way back when in 2008. So you're looking at 8 years ago, I kept screaming, saying, you have to look at this man. I know it said he was retired from the CIA, but Graham Fuller never retired from the CIA. He still works both for NATO and the CIA as contract worker. He's getting paid. He works in Rand corporations, and he's still one of the main handlers for the terror network of Imam Fethullah, Mullah Fethullah Gulen here in the United States. And there are other figures as well. And again, these figures were handpicked by Clintons during Clinton administration for these operations utilizing this Mullah, this Ayatollah Fethullah Gulen. Other people, for example, would be Mark Grossman. Mark Grossman used to be the U.S. ambassador appointed by the Clintons, the Clinton crime family. I have to refer to them as mafia, to Turkey. And while he was there, even before Fethullah Gulen came in, to the United States, was brought by CIA airplane to the United States, it was Graham Fuller and Mark Grossman, okay, and he's a dual Israeli-U.S. citizen. They were the ones who were grooming and doing the prep work for bringing Fethullah Gulen into the United States and setting up his network in the United States. And of course, they also were in charge of a lot of the heroin labs that back then, some of them were in Turkey, some of them were in Azerbaijan. Again, when you look at those handlers, you see them all handpicked Hillary, Bill Clinton administration era in mid to late 1990s.
Well, in light of Hillary Clinton being the current presidential candidate for the Democratic Party, what would all this mean if she were to be reelected?
Well, what would all this mean to us, to journalists, and to our viewers, to the people? It's totally a different story than what it would mean to the mainstream media in the United States, all the think tanks and NGOs and foundations. I mean, we are looking at a couple who have basically been walking on the water, walking on water. They have weathered 4 or 5 potential prosecutions. We saw what happened with the Libya-related emails and Hillary Clinton. We are looking at an FBI director that is directly tied to them and their foundation. We are looking at this woman Lynch, the head of Department of Justice, who's been pocketed by the Clinton foundations and Clintons, has private conversations with the targets of her investigations in tarmacs, okay, who was employed by a law firm that was cleaning, laundering, whatever, whitewashing Clinton foundation's accounting books. So what is going to happen with the DOJ and the FBI? Well, so far, nothing has touched this couple. That's why I'm referring to them as the mob, as the mafia family. And as far as the U.S. mainstream media is concerned, take a look at it. This information came through Assange and WikiLeaks, and we hopefully will see these documents coming out. I invite people to closely watch the mainstream media. You're going to see how they're going to whitewash all this, because they have been doing the dirty laundry of Clinton administration. 90% of the media, which is the liberal media, that's New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, NBC, MSNBC. Of course, they are not going to utilize this in any way or showcase it. And then the next step is the 5th state that we have been referring to. Look, Clintons were directly supported. One of the treasure troves that Julian Assange released had to do with the direct connections between George Soros and Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. In this particular case, when Hillary Clinton, this criminal, I don't want to cuss too much during our show, the man is communicating directly, and she's the Secretary of the State, and dictating, telling her what to do on what foreign policy, what to do in Albania, what to do in the Balkans, okay? And this is when she was the Secretary of State. So, and the same thing, the same George Soros, that evil man, is the one who brought to us and presented to us Obama, what we have seen for the past 8 years. And look at all the NGOs, whether they are so-called media watchdogs like FAIR.org, whether they are government watchdogs, so-called watchdog organizations such as POGO, Project on Government Oversight. Well, this man is he's giving money to all of them. He's bankrolling all these organizations. So you're not gonna see anything meaningful that should be in place from these NGOs paid by George Soros and the foundations. You're not going to see anything from the mainstream media. This couple will be in jail by now, would have been in jail had they been ordinary, real Americans, okay? They are like the mob families. They have the media pocketed, and they have networks with all these mafia mob thugs, whether it's Fethullah Gulen terror organization, the drug heroin dealers, or it's with the evil man George Soros. So that's the network they belong to. So it's going to boil down to you and me. It's going to boil down to the people here in the United States who still think their votes matter. And even to a certain degree, it's going to depend on the people around the world. because what they do, what happens here, as we can see with these emails, has direct implications all over the world. It's Fethullah Gulen, CIA, Soros. These are the people who organized that failed attempted coup in Turkey. It's the same people who had firsthand directing, managing what we saw in Ukraine. These are the same people, based on the emails released, who manage what we do in the Balkans. So this would be an eye-opener, not only for people in the United States, but also around the world. But I really hope that people just stop and say, really, just going into this, choosing between the lesser of two evils in their mind, we're going to go down on the boots and we are going to cast our vote for this crime family. Okay, for Hillary Clinton. I mean, could you get someone nastier, dirtier than this couple? I have to say, of all the politicians, presidential candidates, everyone I have seen through my almost 5 decades of life, I have never seen anything like this crime family called Clinton. And we are looking forward, and hopefully these emails will have far-reach implications. I won't hold my breath, but I am thankful to see that WikiLeaks is releasing these raw data the way they are and the way they have been doing. So if people are looking and comparing that, what WikiLeaks is doing, and compare it to sold out, controlled opposition, limited hangouts like Glenn Greenwald and Snowden, they should see the value of what he has been doing. And at least in this case, and he did the same thing. Julian Assange was the only outspoken person from the so-called whistleblowers community raising the alarm on what NBC did. So it was a support by really putting the truth forward and saying, NBC, this is unprecedented. They actually directly participated in this illegal coup attempt. So far, what I'm doing is I'm saying bravo, and I'm clapping for WikiLeaks on this particular case and saying very good. And we are impatiently waiting for more.
Well, that's right. And please stay tuned. We'll have much more on this topic to follow. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.
Thank you.